history is available also on the Notes tab. Another main upgrade in this version of ticketing are permissions and notifications. For example, you can set permissions to delete or assign or update a ticket at the individual Billmax user for that particular queue. Notifications are available for all kinds of things, and in this case, they're being notified because the ticket priority changed, but you can also be notified if the ticket is created, assigned, or the queue changes. All different kinds of things are available for you to set up so that you're notified of the things that you're interested in. Also, each ticket can include a link to the ticket itself if you're logged into Billmax. Queues are still an essential part of ticketing. Communication within a queue can be set up for internal or with your customers or for notes only. So there's a lot of different options there. And another exciting improvement is this service level agreement. A service level agreement can handle multiple issues, and you can have a different level of service expected for each issue. The SLA can be denoted on the queue itself or on an individual account as well. A second item that has been completely redone is our new customer portal that is now device responsive. Bill had a tremendous amount of input and effort into the customer portal, so he's going to walk you through this piece.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending. Want to talk a little bit about the customer portal. As some of you may remember, the existing customer portal, it was rather limited in its branding and its capabilities. You know, it met the need for most of our customers, but you know, we felt like we needed to be able to do more and continue to expand upon the operations and the various things that you might want done in the customer portal. So, you know, as I mentioned, it was unbranded. You pretty much had to brand it before to use it, and it was non-responsive. And by that, what I mean is it didn't look very well on a tablet or a mobile phone or something along those lines. And lastly, I mean, this is something internal, but it benefits our customers. The old portal was rather difficult to develop on. So what it meant was the changes that we had to make, you know, it took longer than it otherwise needed to. So we tried to address all those issues with the new portal. So what you see here is actually the login screen. And you can see, you know, out of the box, it looks quite a bit better than the old portal did. So one of the things that we tried to do in this portal as well is allow you to make modifications to it without actually hacking any of the code or any of the templates. So you can make changes to the portal via configuration files now. And secondly, all the pages within the entire portal are template based. So if you don't like something that you see on every page that's part of a header or something along the bottom lines or side, or if you don't want the menu, all those things are easily changed with just a few edits. So what you'll see on the left-hand side is a menu, and the right-hand side is always the content. With the menu comes and goes depending on the size of the device that you're actually that's actually being used. So for a mobile phone, for instance, you might only see the menu. Then you would click on one of the links in the menu, and from there, then you would actually see the content. So a few other things that we've done is we've added some extra features that we felt were needed. In the prior portal, you could always download statements and invoices, but you really didn't have a view to the actual transactions themselves. So that's what this particular display is showing. You can see payments and invoices and discrete transactions, credits and what have you, without having to see that same information from a particular statement. So you can do a search on those transactions and as well as download them. So again, along the lines of increasing the capabilities, one of the things that we intend to do is to show usage where applicable. In this case, it's radius usage, but we have plans to show PDF records as well as usage from other devices. You know, whatever you might have, whatever makes sense for your WISP. So a part of the new portal is actually a very good step-oriented shopping cart. So this is the beginning page of the shopping cart. From that, customers can order service, modify service in some way, you know, maybe purchase a modem or hardware device, what have you. So I won't show you all those screens for that, but the customers walk through it step by step in terms of you know, the ordering process, you know, like you're familiar with. And it works quite nicely with a new customer or an existing customer, depending on what the case might be. So there are a couple of things that aren't mentioned in the slides, but I did want to bring up. One is ticketing. So there are now interfaces to the ticketing system from the customer portal. So customers can create their own tickets from the portal and receive answers back from the WISP in terms of, you know, replies or help. That can be text or HTML based, and you can exchange files that way, back and forth between the clients. So the client's got a particular issue. Maybe they can take a picture of something like you know, a radio, you know, maybe having some issue or, you know, slightly off the pole or something, and they can take a picture and send that in, for instance. The second thing that's not mentioned, but it's really quite important, is device self-management. So some of our clients will have packages, and the package represents, you know, the item, the service being sold. But underneath the package within Billmax are devices. And the devices, typically, it's just a list of MAC addresses. So there is an interface now where the customer can go into the portal, access their package, and add or delete or change device addresses so that those devices will be authenticated and will be usable in your system. I think that's all I have, Ellen, if you want to pick up from here.
Okay, this is the last item of the many items, but we have a short time today and we want to use our time efficiently, is the ability now to customize your display. In My Items, there's now a new item called Customize Display, and it allows you to order and display or not display different boxes on the accounts, either new or existing, or users new or existing. So the setup looks like this. And so for this particular, I'm setting it up for existing accounts. I'm thinking that I'm going to use payment methods, overdue fields, and status fields the most. So they're going to be the top 3 boxes then across the top. Instead of this and this and this, it'll be those 3. And then I have decided to delete or leave off miscellaneous and discounts because for whatever reason, those fields do not apply to my situation on a normal basis. And so that way, each Billmax user that logs on can establish their own display based on their current needs and functionality that is important. So that's it that we're going to show you at this time for Billmax 2017 Q4. We'll answer questions at the end after Preseem has a chance to do their presentation. Okay, Dan, your turn.
Thanks, Bill and Ellen, for that. So what I'm going to do is kind of talk a little bit about Preseem and generally kind of the problems that we solve. So I'm going to do this in kind of 4 high-level areas. So the first is just a general, what is QoE, 50,000-foot view. Talk a little bit about the difference between QoE monitoring versus network monitoring. Talk about how we do plan enforcement and how that's a little different than some other enforcement techniques. And then we can talk a tiny bit about the integration with Billmax. Fortunately, it's so easy. There's not a lot to say, but it's still, we'll touch on that briefly. So myself, before we get going, just very briefly. So in the past, I owned an ISP a long time ago. I've been a network admin for different ISPs doing BGP, OSPF, DSLAMs, wireless, all that good stuff. After that, I ended up being product manager for a vendor. So worked on some products that still are deployed at some of the largest ISPs in the world, places like Telefonica, for example. But now very happy with our current company that I'm a co-founder in to be entirely focused on building products for small ISPs and specifically WISPs. So definitely the area that I care the most about. One of the things I do on the side is I'm on the board of a local cooperative telco as well. So the whole small ISP space is something I care a lot about. So very happy to be spending time in that area again. So QoE. So there's lots of definitions of QoE.
Hey, Dan,
Yep.
Excuse me for a minute. It looks like you're cutting out a little bit.
Okay. Hopefully that's okay. 1 sec. It's very bad. Okay.
It almost seems like a network issue of all things.
Okay, I'm not sure if I can do much about that right now. Just give me 1 second here. Is that any different, or is that still cutting in and out?
No, that sounds better.
Okay, I don't know if I changed anything, but we'll try again. So QoE. So there's many different definitions of QoE. I mean, there's formal definitions and stuff. The definition I prefer intuition, I guess I prefer, is really just to think about it as all the points between up and down. So traditional network monitoring is going to tell you if a node is up, if a node's down, you're going to get your pages and things. And that's all very important functionality to have. But what it doesn't do is tell you the reality, which is the network can be up, but maybe not delivering the service a customer expects. So it's up, but not delivering low latency for a game or for a VoIP call, for example. Or it's up, but can't deliver enough throughput for Netflix, as another example. So really, this is all about, yes, nice. So it probably is a QoE issue, actually, in our Wi-Fi. But really, this is all about measuring the actual experience from the customer's point of view versus from the network point of view, so that you can make it better, you can increase or reduce your churn, increase customer satisfaction, which is obviously good for your business. So how is this different from traditional network monitoring? So just to kind of level set, when I say traditional network monitoring, I mean ICMP pings to network nodes or SNMP to get statistics from individual APs and routers and switches and all those things. This is all stuff you absolutely still need, typically polled at a 1 to 5 minute kind of interval, so not particularly granular. But if you think about these systems, what you're configuring in them and what you're monitoring is nodes in the network. So it's fundamentally about the network itself. But your customers don't care how many routers or switches you have in your network. They care about the delivered service. And that's really what we try to focus on with the QoE side of things. And there's a few areas where this traditional network monitoring can actually be pretty misleading in terms of the QoE. So if people try to use it as an example, as a proxy for QoE, situations like multiple network paths, where your active probes from your NMS are on a different path than the subscribers, for example, that can be very misleading, make you think you have good QoE when you don't. But there's also insidious versions, like this example I have here, with a network that has different queues set up across it. In this case, the red one, the yellow one, and the purple one. The yellow one being subscriber traffic and the purple one being NMS traffic. In a situation like this, your NMS may report very low latency, but because all the subscriber traffic is in a different queue, subscribers are experiencing significant latency. And we'll see a concrete example of that in a second. But what's really insidious about this is it can happen and you don't even know. It can be the default settings on a router or a switch to treat different packets differently based on the IP toss bits or the Ethernet priority bits. There's a lot of things that can happen here that you won't necessarily expect to be happening in the network. One concrete example of that is this chart here. So we had a customer that had a box in their network that was doing the plan enforcement for them. And they also had an NMS that was doing their network measurements, latency, and they were using that as their measure of essentially QoE. So the NMS was reporting nice low latency, but when we actually started measuring that latency on the subscriber side of things with Preseem, we've seen upwards of 80 milliseconds of latency to individual subscribers. And what was happening is that device that was doing the plan enforcement, because it only impacted subscriber traffic, and the NMS is not a subscriber, it was only impacting the real subscribers and not the measurements coming from the NMS. So when we turned off that box, immediately you can see the discontinuity here of it dropping 40 milliseconds in the latency. So that was real latency being introduced into, in this case, it was probably a single subscriber's traffic based on just the way that plan enforcement was done. So we'll talk a little bit about that again in a second when we get to plan enforcement, but it's just an example of how NMS-based measurements as a proxy for QoE really aren't that accurate. So what do we do that's a little different? So what we do with our QoE monitoring platform is essentially we sit in line in the network, and instead of introducing new traffic to the network, like SNMP or ICMP, we actually extract our metrics directly from the subscriber's traffic. So we calculate the latency by taking timings between packets. We take throughput, packet losses, all that kind of stuff directly from the subscriber's traffic. So the key thing is it doesn't matter how many routers you have, how many switches you have, what their queues are set to. We're actually taking it from the real subscriber traffic, so we're able to present the actual QoE that the subscriber experiences. And the way that we do this is essentially for every IP address in the system, we track these metrics at a very fine granularity internally. We bundle it up every 10 seconds, send it to the cloud where we do all of our data analysis and extract the individual QoE metrics and present that back in a way that makes sense for your business. So specifically for WISPs, that means telling you the QoE for subscribers, the QoE for all the subscribers on a sector, the QoE for all the subscribers on a tower, for example. And it's really that breakdown that allows you to directly target where you need to fix something in the network or where you need to make investment in the network to keep a high QoE. And sometimes it can be surprising. Sometimes you can have a part of the network with high bandwidth, but still delivering a good QoE, and another part of the network with low bandwidth where you would think that there's a congestion problem, for example, but the QoE is still high. And it really it just depends on the latency and loss characteristics and stuff that are actually measured on those networks. And again, it can be quite surprising where you're delivering good QoE versus not. In addition to measuring the QoE and giving you, again, the breakdowns that allow you to target your activities, we also can do plan enforcement. And we do that through advanced queue management techniques, which are a little bit different than many other platforms. So just to kind of level set the plan enforcement side of things, this is what you might consider shaping or something like that, where you have a subscriber with an 8 meg plan, 8 meg down, 1 meg up, for example, and there's some element in the network that's responsible for enforcing that limit. So there's many different places you can do this, right? You could do it with limiters on the access point. You could do it on an intermediate router. You could do it on a core router. There's lots of different spots to do it there. But the choice of where you do it has a very dramatic effect on the QoE. That example that I showed earlier of that simple kind of dumb shaper per subscriber adding 40 milliseconds latency, that's just one example. If this isn't done well, it seems like a trivial thing that should just be turned on or turned off. But if not done well, it really does have a big negative impact on the subscriber. And to try to explain a little bit of why that's the case, without going into crazy queuing theory and stuff, I'm trying to talk about a couple different ways here that networks deal with this. So in a packet network, when you receive a packet, you have a choice. If the outbound interface is busy, you can either drop it on the floor or buffer it. That's really the difference between rate policing and queuing. The rate policing is something you'll find in lower cost devices that don't have much memory, for example. And again, as soon as they get a packet, if they can't transmit it right away, they just throw it on the floor. It's easy, it's cheap to implement, but it does result in a higher packet loss rate, and it does result in lower link utilization. So that's why most systems have some amount of queuing, which is the right-hand side there. Obviously, you get better link utilization, but your latency goes up as proportional to the queue depth. So if you have a really deep queue, that last packet that's sitting in the queue is going to take a while to get out the other side. And then that's going to add latency to the individual flows in the network. Of course, when the link is full or when the queue is full, you still have to ultimately drop things, but the queue allows you to absorb bursts. What we do differently is we apply some interesting techniques that have come out of IETF work and others in the last while. Specifically, if you search for FQ-CODL and CODL in general, you'll find some IETF drafts and stuff around this. But essentially what it does is it allows you to keep just the right amount of queue in the device to ensure that you have high utilization, but it also provides per flow effectively fairness and prioritization as well. So in this really simple example, I show 6 queues. The reality is we provide about 1,000 queues for every individual subscriber. Their flows are spread across those queues, and that ensures that no individual flow is going to basically crowd out the other ones. And there's a second level of optimization that interactive flows, so things that only generate a packet at certain intervals, like say like a VoIP stream only puts out a packet every 50 milliseconds or whatever that number is, or a DNS query, which is very on and off quick. Those things are implicitly prioritized as well, right to the front of the queue. So this means that if you've got a big download going on, your DNS lookup, which has a huge impact to how fast you perceive web browsing, that's going to shoot right to the front of the queue, out the other side, and the reverse is going to happen on the way back down. So this is kind of abstract. If this is something that's interesting to you, I'm happy to talk offline in great detail about this. It's something I find fascinating, but there's also some great IETF drafts. In terms of kind of customer experience, this actually really does make a difference. So we had one WISP customer who has a buddy that was one of his customers, who was always complaining that when his wife was watching Netflix, his game sessions had high latency. And that's just because Netflix is big and it's sending a lot of data down the pipe. Once he put our shapers and our plan enforcement in place, that just went away. I mean, Netflix still got all the bandwidth it needed, but whenever his game packets arrived, they got first crack out the other side, and that matters because they were latency sensitive. So very quickly, he asked his friend how it was going, and his friend said, yeah, that problem went away. So that was just one small anecdote of how this actually helps. So that's a little bit of how we do plan enforcement different than other devices. In terms of deployment model, Preseem is essentially deployed as an inline transparent bridge. From there, we extract our metrics, do all our QoE calculations, and do the raw QoE calculations, pump that up to the cloud where we do the analysis, the data presentation, storage, and all that kind of stuff. The second or third component is the SNMP side. We do need to reach out to some of the access points to get topology. So if you want to know the QoE on an individual subscriber, there's a SNMP configuration as well to get some of the mappings and information we need from the access points. And then the other important part is integration with Billmax. So what this means is that you don't need to tell our system about your subscribers individually. So you can imagine how much of a pain it would be if you had to go into Billmax, create a subscriber, set their rates, and then log into Preseem and create a subscriber and set their rates and try to keep that in sync. And it would just be a disaster. So essentially what our integration allows is a single point of entry. You go into Billmax, configure things like you would otherwise. In the background, Preseem is automatically talking to Billmax to extract out all the information we need to do our reporting and to do the plan enforcement. And that's really all there is to it. It's very, very simple. It seems kind of weird to end a webinar with a slide just saying how simple it is, but it really is. You know, we turn it on, we extract the information, and things just work. There's really no more configuration on it besides that. So that's a 50,000-foot view of what Preseem is and what we do. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to do a demo and show you exactly how things work or do a trial. So with that, I think maybe Ellen, Bill, if we want to unmute, and if anybody has any questions, we can just kind of take it from there. Brad, yeah, so we can intersect. We have, if you go to our website on the hardware page, there's appliances there that will do 10 gig, or you can use your own hardware if you choose to go down that path. Typically, there's not a need to cluster them. And that's not something that we do today. So the only, maybe you're trying to get to asymmetry or something there. But typically, we just need to intersect a link. So if you did have two 10 gig links beside each other, we could do that with an even higher powered box than we have on the site there. Or you might just have two boxes. I'd have to understand a little bit of the traffic flow in the network. But yes, that should be something we can deal with.
Yeah, there was a question regarding ticketing and its support for inbound emails. The answer to that is yes, and that's been there for quite a while. In the ticketing system, you can set up a queue and link it to a particular email address. When people email to that address, it ends up as a ticket in the Billmax system. And in fact, you can use your email client as a tool to author responses and without actually going to Billmax and entering responses in the Billmax interface.
There has been a customer that has integrated and is using Preseem with Billmax. Yes, that was the question, and that is true. We're also recording this presentation. That was a different question. So it will be available to you after this is finished.
So there's one question that, sorry, I missed there from Chris. Is this something that third parties are running for small WISPs? Typically, small WISPs just use it directly. So we have customers down to 50 subscribers, I think. There's some really small ones. We price everything on a per subscriber basis. There's a flat bottom rate of $100. And in terms of hardware, if you already have a small server, like even a little Atom server or something like that, you can run Preseem on it. You don't need to buy the bigger expensive appliances if you're a really small network. So again, if you want to talk about that, just please get in touch.
Dan, actually, I have a question.
Sure.
When you're on the enforcement mode, are you actually talking to the cloud at that point, or is that all resident to the device in the network?
Yeah, all of our reporting stuff happens cloud side. So that's still, I guess, yeah, we've never done a deployment where we did the enforcement and we didn't do the metric side. It still requires the cloud connection. Yeah. So one of the things.
Well, I guess what I was asking is, are you actually consulting with the database on the cloud side for enforcement, or is that something that's sort of cached local to the device?
It is cached locally. So I mean, if there's a failure, it keeps doing its thing and it has the local state, but the initial like population of when it starts comes down from the cloud side.
Sure.
So definitely in our architecture, all the cloud services they're critical in the sense that that's where we do a lot of the intelligence. They're not critical from a minute-to-minute failure situation. So if a link, if there was an upstream link go down or something and our box couldn't talk to the cloud for 5 minutes or an hour or something, that's fine. It'll just run with the state that it has. But you wouldn't be able to start things up without communication to the cloud to get that initial state down.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, this is being recorded. We have the emails will be sent out as well afterwards. So I guess if there's no other questions, or maybe we can wait another minute or so, but we'll probably wrap it up in a few. So thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully you learned a few interesting things, and I'm sure on both sides we'd be very happy to talk to you in more detail.